Okay, greetings everybody. Welcome to FileMaker Pro User Group, Dallas, Texas for April. We're good to have everybody here, both virtually and in person. On the announcement side of things, this last month we did upgrade to FileMaker 22.0.6 Pro. So if you had the client, remember we did the server, fixed a bunch of security bugs the month before. Pro, the client got updated this month, among other things. I use a bunch of the SSH connections, so it fixed some problems with that. So certainly get those latest updates out there. We've got conferences coming this summer. There is the Elevate in Toronto. That's June 4th and 5th up in Toronto. If you want to go up when the weather will probably be very nice up there. Later in the summer, early August, is going to be full access. I'm going, Ron's going, a whole bunch of people are going. It's basically out near the Claris headquarters. If you go, there's probably going to be a number of Claris people there to get to see. So anyway, it should be an exciting conference, and I'm looking forward to that. Then the other conferences really aren't until next October. There's Engage You in Sweden. There's a Barcelona one and a Christchurch one. However, as you notice, there is no Claris developer conference, Engage or whatever they want to call it, this year. So there's a pause this year. So the big conference will be next year, 2027. It was supposedly going to be a destination location, just like we did before in the old Marriott's back when we were doing DevCon. We will see what happens, but I'm excited that we maybe get back into what we used to do for old big developer conferences next year. And up next, we're going to talk about Zerowait. My friend Mike and his company, they've got some impressive hardware to talk about if you want to do some on-prem hosting, not just FileMaker, but also things like AI and LLMs and all that good stuff. Mike?
Hello. Thanks, Taylor. That was great. Picture this. Over the next couple of years, FileMaker and AI will become deeply intertwined. And as we learned last month, Harmonic is already standing right in the middle of that revolution. The demonstration of their powerful new model context protocol tools hit home with me when they mentioned the serious risks of outsourcing your data and the growing threats to data security when using outsourced MCP tools. As AI superintelligence scales up, it is quickly changing our personal lives, our business activities. Our customers are hungry, and its ability to uncover new sources for profit, improve customer service, and product quality. But here's where the plot twists. True control demands secure on-premise systems. Cloud costs are exploding, pricing is unpredictable, and the data security risks keep growing. Just last month, alarming reports surfaced of AI bots that replaced human programmers and were blamed for bringing down AWS services, which is where Apple Claris data is stored. This triggered major outages for AWS customers. Our customers don't want to gamble with shared servers, surprise blackouts, huge exit fees, and the unpredictability and risks of outsourced services. They want to know who will take care of problems quickly. And that's why the hero of the story is Zerowait Simple Converged Solutions. With SimpleStore PE at its heart, backed by more than 25 years of expert engineering, these affordable high-performance servers are AI-ready with GPU support and deliver up to 3 times faster FileMaker performance, built on our simple, converged architecture integrating Proxmox with ZFS for snapshots, encryption, deduplication, and total control. Everything works together perfectly with no cloud surprises. Low risk, high reward, 24/7 US support, guaranteed parts, no forced upgrades, and systems built to last a decade. Your secure, sovereign AI future starts here, and it's surprisingly affordable. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Mitchell. I'm one of the co-coordinators of FMPug Dallas, and I'm an engineer here at Harmonic. I'm just here to say thank you to our sponsors, our host Harmonic, and our lunch sponsors, Zerowait and Harmonic. And now I'm pleased to give a big welcome to Ron Cates of RGCData.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ron Glenn Cates of RGCData. You can just call me Ron. I've slipped the middle name in there because RCData was not available, so RGCData it is. And I suddenly became known as Ron Glenn Cates in the industry. So just to start by telling you a little bit about myself and my experience with FileMaker. I've been developing with FileMaker for a little over 15 years, but my first introduction to FileMaker goes a lot farther back than that. Back in the days of FileMaker Pro 7, and the first introduction was when I was sent by a company to do a course by John Mark Osborne and Matt Petrowski called Scriptology. Some of you guys in the room will be familiar with those names and possibly familiar with that book and that course. So that's what got me introduced to FileMaker. However, at the time I was doing web design, and the company that sent me had a FileMaker division, and they wanted to try and get me into FileMaker, and the head of the FileMaker division sent me to this course, and when I came back, he asked me, so what do you think? And I said, yeah, I think I'll stick with web design. For the next 10 years or so, I did a bunch of other things and eventually came back around to a situation where I was working for a company that badly needed a database, and this is a familiar story in FileMaker, and it came down to, if you're good with computers, can you build us something? And I thought, I'm familiar with this thing called FileMaker. Yeah, I think I can do it. So I jumped in and started building a database for that company, and it soon became my passion and became my career, and I've been doing it ever since. A few years ago, I actually started my own consulting company, RGCData, and I am also the host and facilitator for the Kentuckiana FileMaker Developer Group that happens the fourth Tuesday of every month on Zoom. We're certainly not the production value of this group. And by the way, I forgot to thank Harmonic and FMPug and for Taylor for inviting me to come and be here. But we do invite anybody to come and join us. Our group happens at 12:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. And you can check us out at kyfmp.com. And anybody and everybody is welcome who has any interest in FileMaker. And aside from that, the Kentuckiana FileMaker group is going to be a focal part of this presentation as well, because I'm going to be telling you the story about my journey in learning how to integrate with the FileMaker Data API, and part of that came about when I was fell into the opportunity to start facilitating the Kentuckiana group. I had been going to the group for a while. The original facilitator, Jonathan Fletcher, decided he was going to step down, and they were actually looking at closing the group, and I happened to be there, and I said, I'll do it. And so they said, you're it, and they threw me into the fire. And I had barely gotten out into the FileMaker world and started getting familiar with other developers and stuff like that, and suddenly I was facilitating that group. But it's gone very well, and I've really enjoyed doing it, and we usually have a really good time, so be sure and join us for that. Last year, I was also asked to be on the volunteer committee for the FileMaker conference known as Full Access. A bunch of us got together last year and decided we were going to try and put together something, and we did. We did manage to put that together, and I was contacted because of the work that I had done with the Kentuckiana group and the integration with the registration system there. I was contacted by John Howell about maybe seeing if I could do the website and the integration for Full Access. So last year I did a full registration system and integration with a WordPress website. So those of you who did go to Full Access, when you went and registered online, and when you went and saw the presentations and marked your favorites and did all of the things that we made available to do at that conference, that was all powered by CWP Snippets. So this year, it's going to be happening August 6th through the 10th. We will be back at the Jesuit Retreat Center again in Los Altos, California, and you can check that out at fullaccess.us. And as I said, we developed a fully integrated, data-driven WordPress website and registration system there. So today we're talking about, as I mentioned, CWP Snippets, and we're going to be talking about powering WordPress with FileMaker as a back-end data source. And CWP Snippets is a WordPress plugin that facilitates that integration. So when we talk about web integration, the first thing we need to look at is what are our options for getting FileMaker data into and out of, or to the website, out of FileMaker and back into FileMaker. And so, of course, Claris has their option, which is Claris Studio. And then I'm sure you've all heard of some of the other big hitters, FM Better Forms, ProofKit by Proofgeist. And now we're hoping to be, I don't know if we really deserve being up there with that list of heavy hitters, but hopefully one day we can earn our spot among the heavy hitters on that list. But what we're trying to do is just be the go-to people when it comes to integrating with WordPress. So why are we talking about WordPress? Quite simply, WordPress powers 43% of all websites. It's 60% of all content management websites. And when you compare to the closest competition for WordPress, Shopify, Wix, and Squarespace, they're all under 10%. So there's a lot of websites in the world powered by WordPress. And when we talk about small businesses, which for us and FileMaker, small businesses is pretty much our bread and butter. And so when we look to the smaller businesses, you'll find that even more of a higher percentage of those businesses use WordPress. But the biggest reason why I got into integration with WordPress is because I had clients that had WordPress and they needed to integrate their FileMaker databases. So that's where it all started. It's when I did my first couple integrations, and the reason why I got into and decided to develop CWP Snippets was simply the fact that the FileMaker Data API was a bit of a mystery, and there weren't a lot of resources out there, especially very few, if any. I honestly don't think I could find any resources that talked about integrating FileMaker with WordPress and with the Data API. And so if anybody has actually done, and I know at least one person that I spoke to before has done some integrations with WordPress, and the ones that I did, it really just felt like a hodgepodge, wedge it in there, figure out how to get it done. I had to upload some files through FTP, I had to set up some things, and it just didn't have a smooth integration, and there wasn't really native support in WordPress for FileMaker and for the Data API. So I decided to build it. And so what I did is I came up with CWP Snippets. And the thought process behind CWP Snippets was simply the fact that when thinking about trying to develop a WordPress plugin to integrate FileMaker, one of the biggest things we face is that we live in a world of custom-built databases. And so we weren't working with canned solutions that we could pre-program and build a structure and a connectivity with already predefined fields and predefined tables and layouts and all of that kind of stuff, because every database that we work with in large part is different. And so we had to have the ability to customize and be able to make those connections between different databases. So my initial integrations with WordPress, I always relied on a snippet plugin. And a snippet plugin in WordPress is a plugin where it provides you the ability to write your own custom PHP, JavaScript, CSS, that kind of coding in the WordPress environment. And so that was how I started. But in order to get it to integrate with FileMaker, we had to add some things to it. But at its core, CWP Snippets is a snippet plugin. So it's a full-featured snippet management plugin for WordPress. It stores and manages custom PHP, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS code snippets. It provides a code editing environment where you can edit your code directly within the WordPress admin environment. And it includes syntax highlighting and history. We've built in robust error handling. We put in a lot of safeguards because one of the dangers of custom coding is that you can create conflicts and crash your website, things like that. So we put in a lot of error handling to try and catch those errors and prevent them from crashing your site. But it allows easily injecting custom code into your posts, pages, widgets, and such using shortcodes. You can also create global functions and scripts that are available and applied site-wide. So what makes this unique and built for FileMaker? So from the beginning, the first thing that we did is we built in a place for secure credential storage management so that you can put in your user account, your password, and things like that, and be able to securely store your credentials. Secondly, we built in the mechanisms for handling tokens. So if anybody's familiar with working with a FileMaker Data API, when you make a call to the FileMaker server, issues a token. And when you get that token back, what you want to do is reuse that token so that you can keep that connection open and you continue to call that same connection instead of reissuing a new connection. The way I think of that is on the server, and I think of it the same way with perform script on server. When you are using the Data API or you're performing script on server, I always think of it as you're spinning up an instance of FileMaker Pro, like an invisible instance of FileMaker Pro on the server. And so it's almost like opening FileMaker Pro on the server when you make that call. If you reuse that token, you're reusing that open instance of FileMaker Pro. If you don't reuse that token, you're opening another instance and another instance. And so before long, you've got all these different connections opened and all of these instances, so to speak, of FileMaker Pro open on the server. And that does actually come with a performance hit. So there is a little bit of a performance hit every time you open a new connection and get that token. And it's actually quite noticeable. You can actually see it in action if you compare opening a new connection every time to actually reusing a token, it's much quicker after the first connection. So the tokens have a life cycle of 15 minutes, and then it resets the clock every time you reuse it. So you can potentially keep that token open indefinitely, as long as you continue to hit the FileMaker server within 15 minutes. So the other thing that we added into the plugin is a PHP library of object-based functions for being able to do all of the basic CRUD actions, the create records, get records, find records, all of those things. So it's a set of pre-written functions, much like custom functions in FileMaker, and they're already pre-packaged in the plugin so that it makes your coding a whole lot shorter and a whole lot easier. You've got templates available to make those calls. Anybody who's done integrations with FileMaker Data API has undoubtedly probably used one of the object-based classes that's been provided out there by the FileMaker community. Years ago when I started, it was FMPDA by, I believe, Bluefeather, and then eventually we went to FM Restore by 24U. As always, the FileMaker community is very generous about providing those kinds of tools. So what we've done is we've taken that, we've built that same kind of tool, but if you think about FM Restore or FMPDA or any of the other classes that were out there, the problem is that they were not built specifically for WordPress. You could wedge them into WordPress and you could make it work, but it wasn't a great fit. Those would often flag different errors in the WordPress admin section. And one of the things that many of them were based on PHP sessions for storing the token, and WordPress honestly doesn't really like if you spin up your own PHP sessions. So what we did is we integrated the ability to handle those tokens using the built-in PHP database and using transients to be able to store the token in the WordPress database to be able to reuse it. The plugin comes with a separate demo setup and demo database that we provide so that, again, going back to my journey in learning how to do the FileMaker Data API, it was a struggle to find resources, videos, find learning tools for me to be able to play around with and learn how to do this integration and learn how to do the PHP scripting. So when I built CWP Snippets, I wanted to build it as a learning tool. So it's as much something that somebody could load into a WordPress website just for the opportunity to play around with it, see how it connects to FileMaker, see how the PHP scripting is done. And so for doing that, we've included a demo database that you can connect to and play around with. Along with that database is a library of template snippets that connect to that database. So right out of the box, you're already connecting to FileMaker and you're able to start experiencing that connection. And we've got a bunch of sample snippets and templates for using the plugin. So again, going back to when I first started learning how to do the FileMaker Data API, first thing I had to learn how to do was create a local environment that I could test on, because I didn't want to be testing on a live website. And that wasn't even all that easy to figure out until I learned about XAMPP, which is an easy web server that you can install on your local computer, and it's not very difficult to install WordPress on. But later on, we came across WordPress Local, which is super easy to spin up multiple instances of WordPress on your actual local machine. So getting to the CWP Snippets plugin. So if you have a WordPress website and you want to install CWP Snippets, the bad news is you're not going to find it on the WordPress repository. We did try to submit it, but WordPress was not really impressed. Their response was, we have a number of snippet plugins already, and we really don't need another one. And so we appealed that process, and we wrote back to them and said, and we pointed out that the focus of this plugin was for FileMaker integration, and WordPress said, FileMaker who? So we didn't get any cooperation with them, so hopefully maybe someday they'll recognize the value of it and we'll be able to get into the repository. So for right now, the only way to get it is to go to our website, and we'll go ahead and take a look. Our website is cwpsnippets.com. Our company website is RGCData, but we have spun up a dedicated website for our product, CWP Snippets, and that's where you can go to download the plugin. And so all you have to do is go to download, and you would fill out the form and hit submit, and a download link will be emailed to you so that you can download it. Let's see. Oh, great. Now I'm probably going to have that fun. Oh, good. Started where I left off. Okay, so you download the plugin, and then like any other WordPress plugin, you go to the WordPress admin, and you navigate to plugins and install it. Real quickly, we'll go ahead and install it. I've spun up using local, as I showed, a couple of instances of WordPress on this local machine, and I've got them all pulled up for expediency. So here's the local instance of WordPress on my local machine. And all I have to do is go to plugins. I've already downloaded the plugin and put it on my desktop, so it'll make it a little bit easier. So we just click Add Plugin, Upload, choose File, and go to the desktop. And of course, anybody familiar with WordPress knows the process for installing plugins on WordPress. But just like that, we activate it. And then you'll find your CWP snippets over on the left-hand side in the menu. So, let's see. Once we've got it installed, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to set up the demo database so you can get connected right away. And so we have the demo database available in the plugin. So you don't have to do a separate download from the website for that. We'll just go to, what we do is we go to Demo Setup. And there you'll find, let me skip these, get them out of the way. Dismiss. Demo Setup. You'll find a link to download the database, the demo database right there. You can download that and save it to your desktop. All of the credentials for logging into the demo database are right here. We've got the admin credentials so that you can log in as a full access user. And then these credentials here are what you're going to want to put over here. You put the location of your own server, don't use mine. Otherwise I'll have to change the name of it. And then one of the nice things too is once you've got all your credentials in and you hit submit, it's actually going to do a test of that connection when you save those settings. So it tells us right away that we're already connected successfully. And that's of course because I've already uploaded in the sample database to our server. And to take a quick look at that, this is our sample database that comes along with the snippet plugin. And it is basically just a variation of the contact database that ships with FileMaker. We've made that available. The couple key things that you need to be aware of if you're doing your own database or when you're connecting, when you connect to your own database, you do have to have an account with the extended privilege of FileMaker Data API enabled. So if we go to our API account, we look down, we can see where we've got Access FileMaker Data API. That has to be enabled for the account that you're using to make the connection. And then on your FileMaker server, you need to be able to enable the Data API in the FileMaker server admin. So we can take a look at that real quick too. So under connectors, FileMaker Data API, we just make sure the Data API is enabled. And that's all you need to do. And then you can connect to your FileMaker server. In this case, we've got our sample database already connected. So along with, this is your demo setup. When you are working with your production database, you would just go under the normal settings, and that's where you'd put your connection to your production database. So we give you two different places to connect to your databases so that you can have that demo version or that development version available to play around with and experiment with without having to disconnect your production version. So out of the box, CWP Snippets comes with, these are the templates that I was talking about that are for all of the basic functions like creating records, deleting, duplicate, edit, find records. You can get information about the server, your list of database names, you can get layouts, all of the different functions are all listed right here. And the plugin comes with a preview mode where you can come over to the right-hand side and let's do preview of find records. And when you hit preview, it's going to open a new page. and it's going to make the connection to the FileMaker database, and it's going to run that find, and this is your FileMaker data being pulled directly from the FileMaker database. So within literally 5 minutes, you can be connecting to FileMaker and pulling data into a web page using our plugin. And this is what it looks like when you look at what the coding environment looks like. If we go to edit, we can see this is where our PHP code is to call the FileMaker database. We've got our query parameters, and we can run scripts before and after the query. We can sort, we can run a script pre-sort, and so we have all this in there available. And these will serve as templates, so when you're doing your integration, I'll talk a little bit later about our workflow of how we start building with this and how this comes into play. But let me see where I'm at with my... Yeah, from current slide. So the good news is CWP Snippets provides all the necessary code for building your FileMaker web integration. It provides a contained environment where your entire integration implementation can live. What that comes down to is I may be the FileMaker developer, but I may not be the web developer. And so if you've ever worked with a client that has, of course, their own web developer, and that's the man in charge of, man or woman, sorry, in charge of the WordPress website. And oftentimes you get in there and first of all, I don't know anything that's going on in there outside of what I'm trying to do. And that web developer may have no idea what I'm doing. And integrating often outside of our plugin, before our plugin came along, if you were going to do custom coding, you'd often have to put it in the functions file, the theme functions file, the theme CSS, things like that. If the web developer came along and did an update or made some changes and did some stuff, they could easily overwrite your code. Next thing you know, your integration is broken and you got to figure out how to go back and fix it. What CWP Snippets provides is you can have all of your integration within the CWP Snippets, so you can basically tell that webmaster, stay out of CWP Snippets, I'll stay out of your stuff, and we'll get along just fine. So that's part of the good news. And then the bad news is that CWP Snippets provides custom web publishing environment, but you are still responsible for doing the custom coding. It's not a plug-and-play solution where you just drag and drop field names and just create instant connections with what you get interface. As much as I would love to be able to build something like that, as I said, since the majority of the time we're dealing with custom databases, and so it's just far too difficult to try and build something that can accommodate any database. But we also are back to good news again, and the good news again is that we now have AI. These last couple years, as we've been developing with CWP Snippets and have been working on our own integrations, we've really found the power of AI is phenomenal. AI is very good at web coding. And so what we're able to do is utilize the AI environment to write our code for us and then paste it into our snippets, and we can get far more done in far less time without having to hand code all of it. I want to go over a couple of samples. As I said when I was talking earlier about being the facilitator for Kentuckiana Developers Group, this is one of the places where it really got me to dive deeply into doing this integration. When I took over facilitating that group, bless his heart, Alan Bird, who unfortunately passed away this past year, he had the whole thing set up where he was still using quite an old database, and the website was just a web direct interface for registering for the group. And so I felt like we really needed an overhaul, and so I volunteered to do that. And so I jumped in to do that. And the Kentuckiana website is a really good example of what we can do basically with the free plugin. And probably should have mentioned that already, that the plugin does have a free version and it does have a pro version. So the free version basically opens the door and gives you the ability to do short codes and snippets that you can pull into your WordPress pages. And what the pro version does is unlocks the ability to do more powerful integrations with global functions and scripts and CSS. So let's take a look at the Kentuckiana website. So real quick, just a quick overview of the Kentuckiana website. This is where we show, I probably didn't refresh it. So this is where we show our upcoming groups for the upcoming month. We also have the next 3 months upcoming. We have an archive, and it shows our previous presentations, and we post all our videos on our website. So this is where you would come to actually register for the next group. And you just come in here and you put your email address in, and you hit submit, and it does a lookup, does a find for you, and finds you in the database, and then you can just confirm the registration. If you don't already exist, then it provides you a place to create your profile, and then it registers you for the next group. We also have our archive page, and that has a list of the videos that we've done over the last several years that are also available on our YouTube page, but we keep an archive here for them as well. And so what I'd like to show is if I go back to the home page, just make a quick note of what this page looks like. And what we're going to do is we're going to come back over here to plugins, and we're going to deactivate CWP Snippets. And what this is going to do is demonstrate how much of this content is being driven from within the FileMaker database. So now when I refresh the page, you can see all of this disappears. And these are just a series of snippets and shortcodes that are pulling in snippets to reach out to the FileMaker database and bring in all of that content. Same thing if we go to archives. None of that exists on the actual website. It's all being stored in the FileMaker database, and it's all being pulled into the website via the CWP snippets. So we just come back up here. And by the way, if you were looking at the URL, I'm working with our staging site, so I did not just turn off the Kentuckiana website. And so that's, and all of the stuff that we've done with the Kentuckiana website was all able to be done with the free version of the plugin. So even the free version is very powerful, and there's just a lot of options and things that we can do. FullAccess.us is another example that we can show, and Full Access showcases a little bit more about what we can do with the Pro version. So we'll take a look at Full Access. And so we have our testimonials from last year here, and there's not a whole lot else on the homepage that's being pulled directly, but we also have our list of people attending this year. You too could be on this list if you'd like to go and register for Full Access and join us in California. Shameless plug there. And then we had a list of all our sessions. And then once again, if we go over and we deactivate the plugin, we can take a look at so we go back and see what content is being pulled into the website. But that's not much different than what we were doing with the Kentuckiana website. It's hard to demonstrate a lot of the real power of what we're doing with Full Access, because what's happening is behind the scenes with functions that are running behind the scenes and being able to do some of the things that we're able to do. So if you happened to attend Full Access last year, you might have seen that some of the things that we were able to do is on our name badges, we had a QR code that when you pointed at your camera at the QR code, it actually downloaded a vCard file and automatically put it into your phone, your device contacts. The way that was being done is that URL was going up to a function that was created in CWP Snippets that was then reaching out to the FileMaker database, and it was grabbing that vCard file from a container in the FileMaker database and sending it back through the website and back down to the device. We've actually been able to do things like create custom API endpoints. We also have, I think I actually added some, yep. So along with just retrieving data from your FileMaker database and pushing data back in, we also have the power to create our own custom API endpoints. We can create webhooks, and we can also create some things that we can do where we're pulling into FileMaker web viewers in FileMaker. Let's see, I think I'll try to demonstrate a couple of those things. So let's take a look at, probably for starters, we'll take a look at, forgot to mention this too, because this is pretty important as well. So one of the things we've been working really hard on in the last year at RGCData is a selection of pre-written snippets that are available for download that you can just import right into CWP Snippets in your own site, and they're ready to use right out of the box. We have a few that are available for the free version of the add-on, but we have quite a few that are available for the pro version. And some of the stuff that we're doing is a lot of payment processing type add-ons, including authorize.net, some form handling, and webhook endpoints, upload endpoints. But the one I'm going to demonstrate right now is called our Stripe bundle. And so our Stripe bundle, if you go to your CWP Snippets website and you just hit import and you download it from our website and then import it, you can import it into your CWP Snippets. And if you go to the samples page, that's where you'll find all the samples of the forms and things that come along with the snippets. So we look for our Stripe bundle sample form. And when we hit preview, it brings up our form. And so I'm going to go ahead and process a test card. Let's see, is everything in there? Yep. Oops, missed the. And we can see that we processed successfully. So what's happening in the back end is that over here in our CWP Snippets site, this one right here, if we go to the Stripe bundle admin section, that was Stripe endpoint, and we take a look at our transaction log, this is where the data is being first and foremost stored in the WordPress database. So we can view it and look at it right from here. What do we do? View. There we go. And we can see that this is the data that's being stored, and it's also the data that's being sent to FileMaker. And this is what it looks like on the FileMaker end. This is record number 4 is the record that was just created in FileMaker, and we've deposited the data right here, and I've created a quick format JSON button so we can see all of our data here in the field in FileMaker. And so our script that sends the data from the website has a follow-up script. So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to create the record and dump the data, and then it's going to run our log request. And then that's where we determine what to do with the data. Essentially, what we've done is we've created a system that takes that kind of raw data from the transaction and then dumps it into FileMaker, and then it's up to the FileMaker developer to decide what to do with that data. And it's just a matter of picking up the JSON and creating your invoice and creating your line items or whatever you want to do to complete that order in FileMaker. But what we've done in the website is we've added a fallback safe point where we're storing that. Like for instance, if you look back here in this one, this transaction, the FileMaker sync was disabled when we did this one, but I can come here and I can hit resend, and it will resend that data and show that it was successful. And then I can come into my database and I can look at the next record is record 5, and it's resent that data to FileMaker so I can make sure that I have that data in case FileMaker was down for maintenance or for any other reason the FileMaker database wasn't available. We have that fallback where we're capturing it in WordPress so that we can still have the data available to us. And so this one comes with a lot of different configurations. And what happens when you import some of these snippets is they create a menu item underneath CWP Snippets under add-ons, and then you have a whole selection of different snippets that you can choose from. We always try to include lots of setup and usage information on how to use them. The ones we've built in a lot of features go back and forth between test mode and demo mode in the database and things like that. So the library is there, it's available to explore. And again, most of them you will need CWP Snippets Pro. And the other thing too is that you do need CWP Snippets Pro to import. So if you do want to use the free version and grab a couple of the ones that we have for free, you will have to copy and paste the code into your snippets instead of importing. But we provide everything available to you so that you can do that. Yeah, it's our goal to expand the capabilities and provide a lot of pre-written stuff that just about I think there's very few exceptions, if any at all, of these snippets that were not developed because we had a need for them in one of our integrations. And so we went ahead and developed it out to a point where we can distribute it and make it available to the CWP snippet users. All right, why don't we try demoing one of the other library snippets? So looking at webhooks. So webhooks allows you to create your own custom webhooks for things like, a lot of times our integrations and several of our integrations that we did early on before I got to build CWP snippets had to do with WooCommerce and integrating with other plugins and things like payment processing like Stripe. And the way to get the data into FileMaker was to use a webhook. And so you would have your WooCommerce shopping cart and you would have a webhook that would send your data either to Claris Connect, or maybe you've got the Auto FMS by Proofgeist, where they have a webhook endpoint built into that. And so what we've done is we've created our own ability to build endpoint destinations directly into your website with CWP snippets. And so here we have where we create a webhook. So if we add a new endpoint, we can give it a name. There's different options for security validation, a status to enable it, and then each one can have its own FileMaker settings, so you can actually send the data to different FileMaker databases. And we have the ability to test here, and this should demonstrate there. Now we actually got data into FileMaker with the JSON payload that we were looking for. This is the test payload that would come from your webhook. So if you put your webhook into WooCommerce, for instance, when an order was placed, it would pass through your webhook and then it would send to FileMaker, and you'd get your data payload in here in FileMaker. So that's one of the others that we have available. I guess I've got a couple others that I want to demo, and hopefully these demos start going a little better. So one of the other things that we're able to do, CWP Snippets is not only, think of it as, it's not one directional. Like, it's not just about the website pulling and pushing data back and forth to FileMaker. We can actually, from FileMaker, using insert from URL, we can push data up to the website from FileMaker. And so we can control and manage the data from FileMaker. Essentially creating in your WordPress website, you can build your own API into your WordPress website. And so we've done that here, just going along with the whole Stripe integration. We've built a snippet where this one's called Stripe Endpoint, and what you do is you import the snippet into your website, and then you give your endpoint a name so that you can target your endpoint. And then we come over here to FileMaker, and what we've done is we've called that endpoint in a web viewer. So what's happening on this page when this layout loads is this web viewer is pulling in a Stripe payment form. And this is probably the closest thing we can come in FileMaker to PCI compliant, because it does not actually reside in FileMaker. It's using a secure connection to your web page and pulling in your payment into your FileMaker database. So when we actually process a payment, none of the payment information ever touches your FileMaker database. Oops, gotta have an email. And we're able to actually process a credit card through Stripe from within FileMaker. And that's using a web viewer. And then, let's see, the other one that I wanted to demonstrate, we have what's called our upload endpoint. And one of the things that we could talk about as well with FileMaker is files. Pulling files and images in particular, displaying images in a web page with FileMaker has its caveats and its difficulties. And sometimes the easiest solution is to just upload the file to the website and then serve it with a regular URL. But we can actually manage that from within FileMaker as well. So from here, I've got a JavaScript here that's using our API endpoint, and this is our web viewer right here. And so we're using our API endpoint in CWP Snippets to pull a list of the directories and files that we have given it access to. And so that would be, if we go to our upload endpoint, this is where we specify, we give it a security code. So this is essentially your API key. And then we give it an endpoint name. And then in our FileMaker database, we plug that into our web viewer. In this case, we're pulling it into the web viewer using our fields. It's basically just building a URL, and this is what the URL ends up looking like, to access that API endpoint. So we can get a list of files, and then we can come over here, and I'm going to give this a directory name. And when I upload this image, it's going to create the FMPug directory, and it's going to load the file into the directory. No more having to go to your media center in your WordPress admin to have to upload and copy your URL and do all that stuff. This is where the goal of this, and we're currently working on a shopping cart now where all of the products are driven from within FileMaker. And so each product has a selection of images. And so the goal of this is so that somebody in that company can go in and edit the image and make changes, change the image or the product or any of those things, and never have to go up to the web server to do that. Never have to get into WordPress, never have to go into the WordPress admin to do that. So this gives us the control and the ability to actually manage those files from within WordPress. And it includes the ability to delete. And so what's happening when we hit delete on here, it's firing a FileMaker script that uses the data insert from URL script step to send a command to that API to delete that file. And I were to come in here and pull this directory out of here and relist my files, I can get to FMPug and delete the directory as well. So now I've actually built file management into my FileMaker database and have some direct interaction with the WordPress website. All right, let's see if we can't get back to. So a few things to keep in mind when you're working with the Data API, with CWP Snippets, with WordPress. And let's make sure I'm where I thought I was supposed to be. Yep. One of the important things to keep into mind is caching and performance. Developing a caching strategy. We all know that FileMaker is not built to be a back-end web server. It's not built for the kind of traffic in some cases that some websites might get. In cases like for us with the Kentuckiana FileMaker developer group, we're probably never going to have to worry about the kind of numbers that are ever going to be a problem for our FileMaker server. But you may be working with a client or with a website where you're talking about hundreds of thousands of hits per day, and you're not going to want to have your FileMaker server getting hit hundreds of thousands of times a day. What we can do is we develop a strategy where we decide how often does the data change. So if the data in your FileMaker that you're displaying on your FileMaker on your WordPress website doesn't change very often, then we can cache it on the WordPress website using WordPress transients. And then every subsequent call, rather than refetching the data, is working from the cache. One of the other API endpoints that we've built as a downloadable snippet and demo is the ability to control that cache from within your WordPress data or your FileMaker database. So with a click of a button, you could clear that cache. That way the next visitor gets fresh data. So if you make a change in FileMaker, then you just click a button and it clears the cache, and that new data is ready to get pulled up into the website. So caching is an important consideration. And the other thing is constructing your database calls in the first place to try and kind of minimize the amount of times that you're calling FileMaker. One of the things to be aware of is in WordPress is there are a ton of caching plugins out there for WordPress. Oftentimes the shared hosting platforms like Hostinger is one that we use. They have their own caching systems, things like that. You want to try not to use caching plugins and try to manage the cache that way as well. Other thing that I mentioned not a few minutes ago was files. So one of the things you'll find with your FileMaker server out of the box, when you try and pull an image from a container and display it in an HTML page, it's not going to show up. That's because the URL that FileMaker passes back to get to that FileMaker container is like a one-time use, one person for that moment. And it has to do with, and this took me a long time to wrap my head around, PHP is the programming mechanism that reaches out to the FileMaker data and pulls it in. And PHP is considered a server-side scripting. But then your HTML that displays it is considered a client-side. That token that is being created for that URL is only good for one use, which gets used when the server side pulls it up. So then when the client side tries to display it, you get a broken image. So one of the first things that you can do, which is actually a little known, it took me a long time to find somebody that knew the answer to this question. You can turn on what's called persistent URLs in your FileMaker server. It's not a setting in your Maker server admin. You actually have to use the command line to set it. And you can set persistent URLs so that those URLs are not so secure and you're able to pull and display them with the coding. So that's something to be aware of. One of the other solutions to that as well is that you can base64 encode the image and you can pull it up to the website and then you can re-encode it on the website and display it that way. Or like we showed with our upload endpoint solution, you can just upload the files or images to somewhere on the web where we can pull them with a regular URL. We do have documentation in CWP Snippets, which by the way, I didn't get a chance to show, but when you go to CWP Snippets, we have documentation. And so we have a whole section of documentation on how to use FileMaker CWP Snippets and a lot of tips and programming and stuff. You can refer to that to find some of the answers to questions. So what's next is really just about what is the future for CWP Snippets, some of the things that we're looking at. The snippet library is is something that is underway, ongoing. We've got, I think, something like 15 or 16 snippets available in the library currently, or at least they will be after I go and fix that field reference. And then we also intend on looking into, currently it works on the Data API, but for the future, and this isn't happening tomorrow or anything, but we do plan on looking into integrating with OData and creating a pathway forward to converting from the Data API to OData. And then at some point, we'd also like to explore being able to create a direct AI interface in the coding environment so you could interface with AI right within CWP Snippets. But all of those things are on the horizon wish list of things that we're hoping to be able to do in the future. And so that's it for my presentation. We've got a couple of QR codes here that are for surveys. One is a survey of a couple of questions that I provided to find out people's different usage of the Data API and things like that. I think the other one was a survey about Claris, the next Claris conference. I think that's what that one was. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Taylor.
Question, have you thought about using field IDs instead of field names?
I had not. So that's a nice idea. Yeah, to help prevent that field reference debacle. Yeah. Thank you for that. We'll look into that. I do that on a regular basis everywhere in all the FileMaker solutions, especially with like layout IDs and things like that instead of layout names. So I do that in a lot of other places, and it's funny that I'd never thought of looking into that. So thank you. Any other questions?
Most of us are quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, how comfortable are you with PHP? And again, that goes back to the fact that, man, AI is such an amazing tool that we now have. And of course, the AI conversation can open up to a lot of different topics and a lot of different fears and a lot of different things. And I have concerns of my own about AI and where it's going and what it's going to mean for our future. But for right now, it has been an amazing tool for us to be able to continue development and do the things that we've done with CWP Snippets. Yes.
How come you guys aren't in the Claris marketplace?
Just been busy and haven't gotten to it. So it's on our to-do list, along with we have every intention of producing tutorial videos and putting them on YouTube, creating series and things like that. Like our ongoing intent and desire with CWP Snippets is really to become an educator and to provide those resources that I felt were not there when I was trying to figure out how to do it. I really spent months of frustration trying to find the right resources to be able to learn how to do this stuff. And so it's really my goal to be able to provide those resources. But We're a small operation. Currently, it's just a two-man team, myself and my web developer, and we just haven't gotten to it yet. So we're working on it. Okay, do we have any other questions?
Yeah. So multi-stack development, we tend to use a 3-stack model where possible. But it looked like, if I was understanding correctly, with the primary server and the demo server, you treat the demo server as your kind of dev or test.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, it's pretty much just a sandbox. So that's the intention, is for it to be a sandbox to be able to experiment and learn and do that kind of stuff.
But if I had 3 separate WordPress servers and 3 separate Docker containers at 3 separate URLs, and a test URL, a stage URL, a production URL, in theory, I could...
First of all, one of the things that is, it comes down to this. If you have at least, if you're using the same username and password across accounts, then changing the destination, the database, the server, and things like that is as easy as just going to, let's see, we'll go to one of the template snippets. If we go to, doesn't really matter which one, if I go to edit. So what we're storing for the demo credentials and all that is just being provided here, and this can be changed. So this is I can hard code that directly in there. So you can actually do that. You could do that with the username and the password. I just wouldn't recommend it. But you do have the ability to point it wherever you want to point it directly in the code. So you can do that. One of the things that we do have on our to-do list is I've wanted to be able to expand our setup to be able to do multiple servers and multiple databases. So that may be something that you can look forward to coming in the future in CWP Snippets.
All right, cool. What is so for the Pro, what is the licensing model?
Didn't even go over that, did I?
Cost? Is it per server, the company? Like, how does it all?
I'll go ahead and bring that up right now. And so we are not making a fortune on the licensing at all. We have the free version, and then it starts at $99 per site annually. So,
That makes sense.
Yeah. So each website that you want to have CWP snippets on with the Pro version, and we have packages where you can do multiple sites at a time. So it's not going to break the bank, and it's not going to make us rich. But hopefully, if any of you need some help with your integrations and you'd like to hire us out, we'd be more than happy to help you out with that.
Question.
Yep.
So if you want to create your own snippet,
Yep.
so we've looked at your templates and we said, this is really great, but we want, yeah. How difficult is that? And the reason I ask more specifically is because I like how clean your UI is. You know, you select the snippet and you get the right groups of options.
Yeah.
Is that part templated in a way that we can repurpose those or decide, okay, for this snippet I'm creating, I need this section, I don't need that section? I mean, how is...
Yeah, let's talk about that workflow. And I mentioned earlier I was going to get back to the workflow with how we do it with AI. And in the past, I've actually done live demos where I've done this with AI, and I had several successful ones. And then AI, if you worked with AI, like, it seems to go through phases where it has good weeks and bad weeks. And then during a live demo, it was having a bad week, and it was definitely not.
It's like a teenager.
Yeah, it did not work out well on that one. So if we were going to create a new snippet, and say we were going to do it and we wanted to be able to find some records and pull some of the data and display it on the page. So the first thing we would do is just create a new snippet and give it a name. Let's say we were pulling a schedule, for instance. And then we create the snippet. And so what I would do, and this is pretty much how the workflow goes, is I would start by going to our template, and I would say, okay, I need to do a find. And one of the things that we're working on is a toolbar where we can pop open this list in your original instead of having to come in, copy and paste it. And actually, so I would go to find records, and there's 2 ways actually of doing this. I can either just go in here and copy it from here. 3 ways, really. Actually, no. Just 2 ways, because if I export it, it's going to re-import us the same snippet. But so I can just go in and edit, and then I can just copy it right from here, and then just go over to my new snippet, and I could paste it into place. Or I can come here and do my find records, and you have to have the Pro version for this. So let's jump over to one of the other. Let's see, where's this library? Yeah, so let's do it over here. I can go to my templates. I can go to find records, and I can, with the pro version, I can duplicate it. And then I can go to my duplicate and edit it and change the name and change from template to snippet. And that'll move it out of my template folder and into my snippet folder, so to speak. So then when I create it, now I've got my basic structure to start my find. And this is where what we would do when we're developing, we would take this and we would copy and paste it into AI. And we would tell AI, here's my script for doing a find in FileMaker. And then we do a preview once we do the basic connection to get to our layout and get the data that we're looking for. And we would copy our data and I would feed that to AI. And I'd say, here's the result that FileMaker returns. Please create a page for me. And if we go back and we look at one of the things I didn't get to, but under our snippets, we also have samples. And what the samples are, we have a set of pulling from the contact form, let's see, contact list, starting with contact list. When you first import it, there's only be these 3 samples, but if I preview that, that's exactly what this is, pulling a list of contacts from our demo database. Oops. Yep. So that's exactly what this is doing, is pulling a list of contacts. There's my record in there. We can also go to a detail view. No. And then I can go to edit. So for instance, if these buttons have a small target area. I can come here, I can actually change my image, I can change any of the data. So these are working samples that work with the demo database right out of the box once you get connected. Oops. All right, the demo gods are just not being happy with me today. That's supposed to work. Let's see, did it make my edit? Yeah, it edited the data in FileMaker.
Okay. I have another question. When you were showing us the container data and the file structure and it's creating a file structure, clarify for me again, where is that file structure being created?
On the upload endpoint that I was demonstrating, this is actually within the WordPress web structure.
Okay.
So WordPress has a default
FileMaker location.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's up on the web server.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
We may be able to see the rest of the survey now.
Okay. We want to go back to that.
You want to guide Ken's pick that switch?
All right. Have you previously used the FileMaker Data API? So 40% yes, 10% PHP API, and half of the people of neither. Yeah, PHP API is where I actually originally started. We're working with a client to convert their PHP API integration over to Data API right now, so there's still some of that out there as well. Yeah.
None of your answer options on the survey included the option of call a friend.
Call a friend.
Just want to point that out. Ask the coach.
So 10% PHP. Yeah. So we have neither. A lot of people that just aren't integrating well. But yeah, that's part of it too, is for a lot of FileMaker developers, integrating with the web is intimidating. And when they've had a client that has said, hey, we need to do some web integration, the answer has oftentimes been, sorry, we can't do that. FileMaker's not made for it. I remember back several years back before I started doing integration, I actually gave that answer to a client. FileMaker's not really made for pulling data and doing that. I decided I didn't like giving that answer, so I had to do something about it. I also wanted to just real quickly, something I usually try to cover, if anybody's curious about CWP Snippets, CWP stands for Custom Web Publishing. And that goes back to the days of the PHP API and the XML HPI. That's what they were referred to as custom web publishing. But it wasn't necessarily specifically meant to only be those APIs, although a lot of people thought of it that way. I'm trying to take over the name and give it a new definition, which hopefully will be CWP Snippets. So maybe
Custom WordPress publishing.
Yeah, there we go. We could do that too. That works. I think, what was it? People have asked me about the name, and I said, I think my number one answer is because FM Snippets was already taken, and it's not even a FileMaker related product or a WordPress related product. A lot of name iterations that I looked into just were not available. Finally, CWP Snippets fell into place. And now exit stage left.